Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video. Today we are going over the state of the ladder that Geebs put out. I'll put a link to it below. Support him if possible. I think there's a Patreon link below too. You can dono. His stuff is really awesome, and this is the first one that's come out for season 1. So we're going to kind of have a chat. I'm going to try and bring my perspective on what I've seen, and just kind of talk about how season 2 is going overall. So I guess firstly, it does seem like MMR is a little bit better from normal. Like, I remember last season, 90th percentile in threes was literally like 1800 still, but now it sort of seems like MMR has pushed up, and I feel like that's sort of reflected even when I play as well. I see MMR generally being a bit higher, a bit easier to get. It doesn't feel as much of a grind to push up new characters. Let me just turn the images off here too. I think the big thing which he mentions here is that only 7.3% of people had played one 2v2 game, 4.6 has played one 3v3 game, and 3.3 has played one RBG. Relatively, at least season 1, BFA, 25% of people had played one 2v2 game. So that's a insane drop. As he mentions here, the PvP gear is not as good in PvE anymore. I mean, it's still decent if you were a PvE who's still good at PvP, like to get that gear. If you can upgrade that to 252, 242 or whatever it gets to, a duelist. Obviously still a great source of gear if you're that, high rated, but honestly, a lot of people aren't really going to be pushing for that unless they're very serious PvEers or PvEers that can PvP as well. Which they're going to usually queue anyway. So it's not like they're bringing in more players. I do think, like I said before, the inflation or the MMR does seem a bit more normal to what had happened before. I think this is a good sign that the season will not be overly deflated. It might be similar to the distribution that you probably saw in Season 2 BFA, Season 3 BFA, where there is a lot less participation, but it wasn't like it was impossible to get above 2,500. Mid-late season, like it was last season, I feel like it was disproportionately hard, considering what it was like at the start of the season. So I think like the big thing here is that the gear distribution level. I think like largely gear does seem to be pretty decently high, but honestly, like it's because we don't even have full conquest pieces yet. So if you are like 1800, 1600, stuff like that, you can upgrade your gear, but you can only really upgrade 3 pieces, so you're not going to be super far ahead of other people. And this is just average item level, not PvP item level. So I mean, largely what I would see in arena, you do see some super geared people, but I feel like gear generally this patch doesn't feel, especially if you played last patch, it doesn't feel as soul crushing as it did at the start of last expansion, because Mythic Plus gear, like, it's obviously higher eye level, but it doesn't scale up. A lot of people are coming in, like the gap between last season, the start of last season, right, you could get 184 pieces from blue honor gear, right, or whatever it is. It turns into epic, but it's largely blue. But from Mythic Plus you could get 210 pieces, so that was 30 eye levels higher. If you got a weapon from Mythic Plus early, then you could get 30 eye levels on a weapon, which is massive. And then if you got the elite weapon in the second week of last season, you were literally like, I think the weapon that you could get was like 190, which was the highest if you didn't get the weapon. And then if you got it second week, you'd be like 70 almost 45 eye levels ahead. Whereas right now you start with a 233 one, it does scale up to 259, but that's still only like 26 eye levels. So it's still a big difference, and I felt that hugely because I made a mistake thinking that you get 800 conquest a week. I bought a cape first week, so I was a week behind on the weapon, and the difference in damage that I feel from last week to this week is absolutely massive. So that's generally a good sign. Spec representation, I think it's no surprise Arms Warriors, this is 2v2, Arms Warriors are super far ahead. I think Sub Rogues are largely ahead too. If we look at ladder distribution, there's a lot of people playing Rets and Havoc Demon Hunters, but honestly, I think the big thing that I've noticed more is you see a lot of warrior comps. I feel like Assass rogue comps are really strong too. Like, you do just generally see a lot of rogues in arena. Demon Hunters do feel extremely strong into certain comps, but they don't, like, there is counterplay. It almost depends on the healer. But I don't think this is too different. Like, you still see a shit ton of warriors here. If we talk about range 2v2, obviously BM Hunter is the big sort of, you see it everywhere. It's extremely strong. In my opinion, probably one of the best classes in 2s in general. When played with a druid or a holy priest, it just feels unbeatable sometimes if they're good. Especially if you put like as a warrior, you're actually pretty good into BM Hunter teams because you have reflect, you have stops, you have banner, fear, all this stuff. Whereas if you are playing like rogue or like any squishy class, BM Hunters just eat you alive. Like, the damage is insane. They don't even really have to trap, they'll just destroy you. Shadow Priest is interesting as well. I think Shadow Priest is definitely one of the best casters in the game right now. It has a huge amount of versatility, not actual versatility, but ability to sort of be played in a lot of different comps. You can play double DPS, you can play healer DPS, you can play a one-shot build, you can play a slow build, and with that new Necrolord build, it's absolutely insane. You don't even have to cast anything, and there's not really much peel to it as well. So I think SP is extremely good. Do I see it going higher in the future? I think with gear, maybe SP will become even better. Especially with a Resto Druid. It's just such a damp comp that just lives forever, and the Resto Druid can kind of provide that off CC, thorns, all this stuff that makes it really hard to kill SPs. I do think one big counter to SP though is Arsham Warrior, which is one of the most popular comps, and Arsham DH, just Arsham comps in general, pose a really, really hard time for Shadow Priest to deal with. And our Druids as well, who are good and can kind of just stay 40 yards away so that the Shadow Priest never gets any goes. I think Fire Mage, obviously, still really, really strong. Like, if you see a Fire Mage, it's definitely scary, but in my opinion, it's not as scary as I felt it in Season 1 BFA, just Rogue Mage in general. Ring of Fire is still really strong. They still have really good resets, but it does kind of feel like you could kill the Rogue after the nerf to that Conduit, so it ends in 4 seconds. You can sort of chase down a Rogue, and they don't have that one-shot double dance stuff. Well, I don't think they do really anymore. They've started to roll the Kyrian one. I don't think it's as good as the last season double dance was. Healers are really balanced right now, actually. I think Disc Priests are pretty strong overall. They do a lot of damage. They have a lot of survivability. Obviously, right now, at the start of the season, I think Disc was sort of considered worse because, you could play Holy and have the stun, but a lot of people are finding this new sort of playstyle with Disc, using the Mastery tree and Venthyr, pumping out a huge amount of mitigation, but also damage as well, and just overall atonement healing. I think Disc is definitely very viable. I really enjoy playing with Disc on my warrior. It's obviously not as strong as an Arsham or a Resto Druid, but generally Holy Priest fits better with Hunters and Rogues, because then you have the cross CC. But for comps that are just pumping damage, Disc is really good. You will face a massive issue when you're versing things like Windwalker or Arsham. They can just spam Purge, kick, and just shut down your Priest, but overall still really, really strong. Arsham obviously is absolutely nuts in 2s for that first minute, especially when they have the Earth Ellie out. But after that, it's not as crazy. It kind of feels like you can kind of deal with Arshams. I'm surprised Resto Druid isn't more popular. I actually think Resto Druid is the best 2s healer for overall healing. But, everything's so close that this could, just change overnight. Holy Paladin is still really good. It's just a bit harder to live some of those longer matches. I think it trades really, really well with, things that have a spear or big 2-minute cooldowns like rogues. So there's still a place for them. They're just going to struggle with mana. And Mistweaver is an interesting one. I actually don't think it's too bad right now, but largely a lot of Mistweaver mains, I think, swapped to a different Covenant, right? A different class. They may have come back to play their Mistweaver a bit, but they've learnt another class already, which is probably still stronger than Mistweaver. I think Mistweaver could do with some extra buffs, a little bit of extra damage maybe, some sort of ability to contribute to the fight a little bit more. However, they are okay in threes as well. It just depends. Like a really good Mistweaver is still extremely hard to lock down. Will still do some really good plays, but overall is not as powerful as like a Resto Druid who can kind of like the difference is for a Resto Druid, they can kind of decide whether they want to play similar to a Mistweaver, where they sit 50 yards away and just spam heal and just never get hit, or they can play very aggressively, cat stun, bleeds, spam cyclones, and that versatility. I think there's not really a spot where you would take a Resto Druid, you would take a Mistweaver over a Resto Druid, because they kind of have a similar role, but the Resto Druid can do both. In threes, I think we're going to see a very, very similar sort of breakdown. Reds are still really good. Warriors are absolutely bonkers. A really big part of this is that Warriors work with almost every single melee here, maybe bar like a rogue, right? So you can play Warrior Ret, Warrior Monk, Warrior DH, Warrior Feral, Warrior DK, Warrior Enhancement Shaman, Warrior Unholy. You could play over Serve Hunter as well, but, it just works with everything. It's like Warlock in BFA Season 4, if anyone remembered. Essentially, you could get two kind of, or, if you have a warrior and a shaman, or a warrior and a druid, you can put any class in the third slot and it's still going to be pretty good. In BFA, that was what Warlock and HPAL provided. Like warriors were pretty bad in Season 4 BFA, but they could play warrior, lock, paladin, and it just worked because there's a lock and a paladin there. It's similar to, like, warriors are in this similar kind of, area now. I think you're seeing a lot of, like, there's less shamans than there probably would be normally. I think a lot of shaman players might have tried to try other classes as well. Turbo is still really strong. I don't think it has the same melee cleave dominance as it did last season, where it was clearly the best melee cleave alongside Ret Warrior. Right now, in my opinion, I think Ret Warrior is an extremely powerful comp, especially played with an Arsham or a Resto Druid. I think you see Warrior DH Arsham as well, TSG, so many strong cleaves right now. If we look at the casters, obviously these all make sense. I think the interesting thing here is Ellie Shaman. Ellie Shamans do have more comps they can play now. You can play stuff like Ellie Mage, you can play Ellie Boomy, Ellie SP even. Like, you can almost pair them with everything. Similar to an SP, SPs can kind of be shoved into any caster comp and a lot of melee comps, and they just work. So, you're seeing the same thing there. Fire mages still have RMP, WMP, a lot of like God comp and stuff like that, which will still obviously be really strong. I think Boomkins overall, and as you can see, are going down in relevance, especially due to the Shackle change and Shackle in general. So like Boomkins before were insanely hard to kill, but now with Shackles, and the fact that they're no longer curse dispellable, I think Druid's in a really, really tough spot because now they're actually killable. You need to be a really good Druid and hold your roars and coordinate with your team to really be farming. You definitely don't see as much of them anymore, and obviously all the Warlock specs are kind of struggling. I think Demonology Warlock kind of feels the strongest in a way, even though it's just a bit cheesy sometimes with a one-shot. Destro is still good. Like, I don't think it's that good because you're just versing a lot of cleaves that can shut down your entire go. But I feel like it's almost there. Like, it feels like it's on the cusp of something of being relevant. Now, the last part to look at is looking at healers. Obviously, Disc is the most overrepresented healer, and it usually is. There's a lot of Disc players generally will kind of jump into the game, and they've got RMP, they've got a lot of different comps, jungle. Holy Pallies are still very represented, and so are Arshams. Resto Druids still look a little bit low, even though they're probably the best healer in threes, in my opinion. And I think overall, Arsham does provide a lot of gas, like you can go really, really hard with an Arsham, but they're still not going to be crazy they still have to heal a lot, which is kind of hard. Sometimes if you have to hardcast as an Arsham, it's quite difficult. And because of how hard the damage is right now, how high the damage is, and how strong melee cleave is, Arshams have quite a hard time healing that. They don't have the same toolkit that like Resto Druids do with Thorns and huge amounts of hot healing, and they don't have like the mitigation that Disc Priests do with like Dome and PS. So, Arsham, a bit I think it looks really, really strong when you have the Earth Ellie out and it feels insane. But as the game goes longer, you have to be playing really, really well to make sure you're not getting into full CC chains and falling behind and having to spam heal. I think the big thing here is Holy Paladin. Everyone said Holy Paladin was going to be bad. It's fine. It's a bit worse with Damp, but honestly, having just Bops and Bubble and Sack, all these abilities against this really fast-paced melee meta just gives you extra time to live and do your go. When paired with like a hybrid, Holy Paladin's kind of lower healing when they're trying to heal efficiently can kind of be made up for with like a Feral's instant regrowths or SP's heals on himself, stuff like that. So I think it's still in a decent spot, probably just not the best healer as it was last season for the majority of the season. So that is the rundown on the state of the ladder. I will share a link to this in the description below. We've got some more 2s videos coming out. Maybe we got some 3s commentaries too. By the way, for everyone interested, I have started streaming again. I stream sort of 10 p.m. or like my time, which is usually in the morning in EU and pretty early in the morning for US as well. So if you are interested in watching that, watching some gameplay, and I'm always looking to play with people as well. I've got a healer, I've got a DPS. Please check out the stream link below for us to follow and say hello when I'm streaming. It's always very appreciated. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Take it easy. Peace out.